Africa is still getting the bulk of tourists from Southern Africa. Well, at least that's what border figures are showing. But the number of overseas tourists has declined by 3.7% from May 2017 to May 2018. So how do we actually attract more visitors? Let's find out from Unathi Henama, who's a tourism lecturer at TUT, and Daniella Cassetti, a tour guide who specializes in the Spanish market. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. Unathi, let's start with you. Down 3.7% in terms of people coming from overseas. What are the problems that are deterring people from entering the country?
The visa issue is the biggest issue that impedes the growth of international tourism to our country, because it becomes so much red tape to come to our country. Number two, the high levels of crime in South Africa would be obviously beamed anywhere else in the world. Just shut down Kimberley had become international news, especially in a social media-driven news segment that we find in the world today. So we need to fix our country in order to attract more tourists.
So, Daniella, let's bring you in there. As a tour guide, are you hearing information like that from travelers who are entering the country? Are they concerned about these things?
Absolutely, absolutely. I have had cases where people have come with their minors. They've gotten to, for example, Sao Paulo. That's the way they can get to South Africa. And for some reason, their permits, when you travel with a minor, you need both parents. If they travel with one and the other one doesn't, they get a permit in Spanish usually. They have to translate it to English. We've had many situations where the clients have had to postpone their trips or actually miss them completely because they were not written in English or because of always visa complications. So yeah, it's definitely been a problem in our industry.
And people still come to South Africa because we have so much to offer, and let's be honest. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But they still, at the back of their minds, have this concern about crime, don't they?
Look, I get people on a daily basis. I just had 30 people this morning. And yes, many people ask, when you ask them, would you like to go on a Soweto tour, a Johannesburg tour, they're like, is it dangerous? Is it safe? Can we come back safe and sound? And yes, the concern is there. But at the end of the day, personally, luckily, I have never had an incident. I don't think that Johannesburg is as dangerous as they actually paint it to be. I think that you have to know where to go, where not to go. You have to actually know the industry, which places are important historically. Obviously, there are places in Soweto that are maybe more dangerous than others, but personally, I feel very safe in Soweto, and my clients have never had a problem.
It's about being street smart, and you have to be street smart no matter where you are in the world, because it happens all over the world. Unathi, let's talk about visitors from Southern Africa, because we do have the highest share when it comes to people from Southern Africa. I'm going to go through some of the figures. The highest increase is 39.2% from Angola, followed by Malawi at 12.2%, and other African countries, of course, tourists from other African countries decreasing slightly, but we still have the highest share there. What's so attractive? Our neighbors, of course,
shopping.
I like it.
Shopping, South Africa, especially Johannesburg, becomes a shopping hub, especially for small traders that come to the city. If you can look, around about 400,000 people that came to our country they came in and out. Now the question we should be asking, of which we know, they have a terrible experience at Beitbridge. And we need to fix Beitbridge to ensure that regional tourism grows, because some international tourists come to South Africa, but they want to go to our neighboring countries, and they hear those horror stories that can make a horror movie happening at Beitbridge, and they say, no, 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 no. And remember, we were selling the World Cup as an African World Cup, but now when we go to Beitbridge, it's a different language.
It's been an issue for a long time, though. Beitbridge border post has been controversial, and the difficulties there is something we've known for, I'm going to say, well over a decade or more. Why is government not addressing this? What are the problems? And is it just South Africa? Or how big a role does Zimbabwe have to play when it comes to that?
Obviously, it's cooperation, but the Zimbabwean side is always faster than the South African side, because the bulk of the bulk of arrivals are coming from Zimbabwe to South Africa. But remember, Beitbridge is the most busiest border post in the Southern Hemisphere. And we have to ensure that we give them world-class service. But I don't think there is political will to resolve the issue. When we look at tourism issues, we've been warning for all these years, but I don't think there is political will to find a resolution.
Yeah. I mean, that's sad to say. I'm hoping government is trying to do something. Daniella, your experience when it comes to accommodation in South Africa. I'm seeing, of course, in line with the drop in international tourists, that there has been a decrease in that market. Income from accommodation decreased by 2.3% year-on-year in May 2018. Yes. Obviously, there's a knock-on effect. Have you
Absolutely. I mean, it has to do with the issue of people visiting less into the country. Now, luckily, in my industry, in my niche market, which is the Spanish and Portuguese, I mean, as much as, yes, tourism, international tourists have decreased the visitors by 3.7%, if you see on the figures, you'll see that Brazil, the people visiting from Brazil has increased by 9.2%. So for us, we can see an increase in the industry, you know. We can see that there's a lot more visitors, you know. It gets to the point where you want to take a day off and you just can't because there's just too much demand. But it's also for different reasons. This morning I was speaking to one of my clients and I was asking her, what made you come to South Africa? And she said to me, you know what, a few years ago, South Africa was one of these unreachable places. It was too expensive to come here. Now flight fares have dropped to nearly 50%. And you know, that's one of the reasons they are now able to come. Obviously the World Cup, like you mentioned, put us in the map, you know. And they could go, obviously when people come, they also want to see the animals. They want to see the big five, you know. They could go to Kenya, they could go to Tanzania, they could go anywhere. But South Africa, as you also mentioned, has got so much to offer. You know, people come here not just for the animals, they also come here for the panoramic views. They come here for the history. They want to know about Nelson Mandela. They want to know about the gold. They want to know about the diamonds. And they also want to know about the cradle of humankind. That place makes you realize that all of us have got something in common. We've got common heritage that we share, so we are not all that different.
So overall, I mean, we know that tourism plays a huge role in bringing money into the economy, into job creation. The fact that we've seen a decline of 3.7% from overseas tourists is major cause for concern. Is our government doing enough to make it more attractive again?
They say they are, but I'll believe it when I see it. The visa regulations are 2 years later. It's 2 years late that we are failing to correct them. So if government has not corrected this in 2 years later, then that speaks volume, you know. The truth is what it is. The truth requires no defense. The truth is own defense. Government is not serious about investing in the tourism industry. And the tourism industry creates jobs at a faster rate than any other industry. I don't know why they're not listening.
What do they do? What should they do?
I do not know, and this is part of the difficult conversation we must be having during the Cyril Ramaphosa administration as to why, because the tourism sector is a coordination-intensive industry. You require different ministries, including transportation, to work together to make it easy to come to South Africa. We need to have a tourism red tape initiative in this country led by the Deputy President to say what is to be done to unlock tourism growth. And if you look at the results of the World Tourism Council on competitiveness, we have dropped. We are now at number 63. We're at number 36. We are dropping. I know people think we are a great country to visit, but we're not that exclusive. We're at the bottom of the African continent. Geographically, it's a disadvantage. We must make it easy for people to come, and we are not.
I mean, security might be one of the issues if we make it too easy for people to visit, but I'll sidestep that issue. And let's talk about traveling locally, because this is something I've been sitting about on weekends trying to figure out myself. We don't know how to travel locally in our own province.
And I'm actually very passionate about that subject. As a tour operator, because yes, I am a tour guide freelance for different companies, but as a tour operator, I focus on Gauteng, because I feel that this province is taken for granted. Everyone wants to know Mpumalanga, wants to go there. Everyone wants to go to Cape Town. But I feel that Gauteng has got so much to offer, and already internationally has got a bad reputation. If you think about it, everyone is like, oh, it's so dangerous, so dangerous. It has become, and for what I've seen in the trips that people have taken, it becomes a stop to go to. You know, it's not a destination. And that is something that I feel should change. Because not just for international tourists, but for locals. You know, I mean, South Africans have this tendency, and I've seen it with my husband's family, he's South African, you know. A weekend gathering is getting together, listening to music, having a bra, having a beer, you know. But there's so much more that you can do. And many places that are hidden, you know, that people don't really know exist, and the information is not that readily available to people. It's not easy to find, and people don't have the time to sit in a computer and say, okay, let me see what I can do this weekend. You say places to visit, and it shows you the typical, but there is so much more that you can actually explore, and it's not that expensive, because maybe many people say these places are not for us, they are for the people with money, they're for the tourists from other countries. No, it's for the locals. You know, I mean, you have simple places like sandboarding in Boksburg. People think, no, I have to go to Namibia to do that. No, you can do it in Boksburg, you know. You have the honeydew mazes. Yeah. It's an amazing place, you know, good for adults, good for kids. You got the James Hall Transport Museum, which is basically a place where you can find one of the 20 South African manufactured cars, the Protea make. People have no idea, and that's for free.
Yeah.
You know, and then you can make a day out of it. You go next door and you go to the park and have a picnic, you know. So it's very, very important, and I think that there should be a lot more emphasis on the local traveling and tourism industry.
That's true, and Unathi, let's speak to you about this, because if you think about traveling as a local to the Kruger National Park, even for instance, the rates are ridiculous. It is ultimately aimed at foreign tourists who are paying with their dollars. I'm not going to go and pay 3,000 Rand for a night in a game reserve as a South African person. Should that change, and is it going to change?
I think we must always understand that as we are developing as a tourist destination, there will be places that cater for the tourists with the big dollars. Let's allow that market to flourish, but let's allow the small players that can give you a far greater local experience to come up, and that forces them to market. You know, it forces them to market in new ways, and also use social media, use the micro bloggers, because nowadays we're speaking about the millennials who are digital natives, and we need to find a way to communicate with them because they represent the future travel segment that we need to tap in right now to sustain our future as a country.
All right, thank you both so much for your time. Appreciate it, coming in this late to speak to us. It was Unathi Henama, a tourism lecturer at TUT, and Daniella Cassetti, a tour guide who specializes in the Spanish market. Thanks so much for your time, guys. Appreciate it again.